a both and when there are multiple instances when it's overwhelmingly coming from the right. This is a disservice because Americans want to know that whoever they are going to be the same, and it is going to be done with the same diligence. And I'm wondering if you will commit to me right now that you will be a voice right now.
The gentleman can respond.
My voice will be through the investigations that the FBI conducts, and we will conduct them all lawfully and equally.
Can we expect in the future that your tweets in related to one killing will be the same level of concern?
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, sir. Director Patel, thank you for being here today, and most importantly, thank you for restoring trust and faith in the FBI, which has been severely eroded under the Biden administration. Thank you for your service and your continued service in this capacity. On April 7th, 2025, Charlie posted on X, "Assassination culture is spreading from the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55% say the same about Donald Trump. And California activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy and set back. Whether losing an election or losing a court case justifies a maximally violent response," end quote. And unfortunately for Charlie, that reaction also came when they couldn't win a debate on a college campus. You cannot be intellectually honest and say that this problem is on both sides. It's not just what happened to President Trump, it's also what just happened to Charlie. We've gotten to a point in America where violence is encouraged. We have a former president of the United States that opens up his campaign in 2019, that's Joe Biden, by saying that his opponent is a, quote, existential threat to this country. Houston, we have a problem. People that you disagree with are not existential threats. They are not Nazis. They are not fascists. They are not racist. They are not deplorable. They are not irredeemable. They are your fellow Americans who have a different perspective on how government should run and what government should look like. Whether or not we should have strong sovereign borders, whether or not we should have safe communities, whether or not we should have places to worship our God and not worry about being shot, whether or not we live in communities and cities that are not overwhelmed by drugs and crime, whether or not we have two genders, and whether or not we have common sense in our policies and our values. And people that believe these things are not existential threats. I happen to be one of these people that believes all of the above, and as someone that served this country in combat, I can assure you I am not an existential threat to this country because I swore to protect her. I also want to point out, how many cities have you seen burned to the ground since Charlie Kirk's death? Zero. No summer of love, no riots, no nothing, no looting, no killing, none. We simply gathered and prayed for his soul, his family, and this country, because that's exactly what we represent. And while we might be angry, this righteous anger will carry on Charlie's message and legacy. I want everybody to know something very simple. Charlie is not dead because of what he said. He is dead because people listened. My time is limited, so I have a few questions for you, sir. And again, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate your time and your service. In your experience in the FBI, have you noticed a precipitous rise in political violence and other associated crimes that you have been investigating so far this year? And if so, is this trend in motive left-wing or right-wing violence?
I can always speak generally, sir. There is too much political violence, and it has been a precipitous rise on too many fronts.
How do we solve this?
We solve this by giving the FBI more authorities to go into and work with the private sector. There are too many online platforms. There are too many social media platforms. There are too many gaming platforms. There are too many places for people from America and around the world to get together without their parents knowing anything about it, without their school teachers knowing anything about it, and infesting the minds of our children and infecting them with radical ideology. And that is the root cause of these problems, and we must tackle it. It is not a 1950s America anymore. In 2025, the cyberspace needs to be tackled.
Thank you. Switching gears, when your predecessor sat right there in that seat a couple of years, last year in a committee hearing, I asked him a very detailed question about Matthew Thomas Crook, the shooter responsible for the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. I didn't get an answer from Chris Wray that day, and I submitted written questions to the FBI and into the record of this committee. And I want to resubmit those questions today because I think we are still awaiting answers to those questions. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit them for the record, please. I'd like to ask you, sir, and the FBI, under your leadership, would you please respond to these questions, and can you commit to doing that?
As soon as the trial's over.
Thank you very much. I will end with this. Charlie Kirk is not dead because of what he said. Charlie Kirk is dead because people listened. He set up a tent that said, "Prove me wrong," and exercised his First Amendment right. That's all he did. And we will continue to do so in this country in order to preserve this constitutional republic. And with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I want to caution my colleagues on, one-sided violence in this country. We just heard that there were no riots on the right. We're literally sitting in the building where there was a giant riot by supporters of the president, the right. We also heard that only leftists, have said that Trump is a Nazi. In 2016, the current vice president of the United States said, Trump is either a cynical asshole or he's America's Hitler. And so this is the problem. I don't want to have to say this garbage, but you want me to sit here and get painted with one brush, the whole left. No, there are extremes on the left, and there are extremes on the right. And we collectively should tackle that. But to come here and just look at us and say we all support what's going on in the extremes is why we can't solve anything in this building. Director, let me say first, thank you for being here, and my condolences on the loss of your friend. And I'm happy to hear that you want to do more on the social media platforms. It's crazy what's going on the social media platforms. There are so many conspiracy theories on what's going on with Charlie Kirk. Israel assassinated him, right? There are conspiracy theories about your personal social life all day. It is totally rampant. Big names on the right, Candace Owens, right? Talking about how what's been released as far as the dialogue between the perpetrator and his roommate is manufactured by the FBI, manufactured by the administration. It is totally rampant, allowing foreign governments to just perpetrate these platforms, all of these bots, all of the time to weaponize Americans. You see what's going on here? This is a byproduct of all of that. What's going on in the streets is a byproduct of all of that. What's happening is you see people celebrate Luigi Mangione is a byproduct of all of that. And so if we want to do something, then we should talk about Section 230. We should talk about how we're going to make sure that we don't let foreign governments poison our children's mind. And so I will work with you on that, Director.
I'll work with you on 230 any day.
No problem. So now, that was the good part. I want to take your attention back a second, okay? Breaking news. Kash Patel is nominated to be the FBI director. Dan Bongino is nominated to be the number 2 at the FBI. MAGA celebrates, rejoices, bells are ringing out. The team, Patel, Bongino, that sought out every podcast microphone to talk about the Epstein list. The names are finally going to get released. It begins. They produce white binders. Phase 1 with the podcasters. This is not actually one of them, of course. I made this. Your name's on it, right? And the names are going to come out. Pam Bondi says the list is on her desk. Then a memo comes out all of a sudden and says, there's no list. Oh, no phase 2. Phase 2 binders never happen. You said the conspiracy theories around Epstein just aren't true. They never have been. And yesterday, in an answer to Senator Kennedy, you said the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. So according to your testimony yesterday and in this committee, according to the evidence the FBI has, The number of names on the list are zero.
No,
Zero.
The index has been released, and the number of people involved in that trafficking operation were charged in 2018.
Other than Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, your testimony in the Senate and here is that according to the evidence you have, the number of other names is zero.
That were charged based on credible evidence.
Well, who are the other names? Give me the other names that weren't charged.
We are not releasing the names of anyone because the Department of Justice never does that, of anyone that didn't have any credible information
Okay,
to attack them.
Let me move forward. The president has, you've seen the picture of the woman's body with the writing and the president's signature. The president says that's not his. Okay? President says it's not his. The Republican colleagues say it's not his. The administration say it's not his. Will you be opening up an investigation into the Epstein estate for putting out a fake document with the president's signature linking him to the world's largest pedophile ring? Will you be opening that investigation into that?
On what basis?
On what basis? They literally put out a fake document, according to the president, with a fake signature. It's a forgery of the president of the United States signature. That's the basis.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay, I look forward to that investigation. Am I over? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your diligence.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Director Patel, as you know, my state, California, is home to the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history, known as California High-Speed Rail, although the name is probably a misnomer. Earlier this year, I joined your counterpart at the Department of Transportation, Sean Duffy, doing a compliance review of the federal money the state has received, and the outcome was that the state has not complied with the terms of its billions of dollars in funding because it hasn't actually built anything. And so that federal funding has now been cut off, but a lot of us in California still have questions as to where all the money went. We're 17 years in to this project, and absolutely nothing has been built. Not a single bit of track has been laid. There are no stations. There are no passengers. And the plan initially was to have the whole thing, LA to San Francisco, done by 2020 at a cost of $33 billion. Yet here we are in 2025, nothing has been built. And according to the New York Times, the project won't even be completed this century, and the total cost is now estimated to be over $130 billion. So I just wanted to ask you, do you think this is something that bears scrutiny, or can you confirm whether there's any kind of investigation going on at the FBI?
The FBI certainly can't investigate incompetence, but the FBI certainly can investigate and does investigate waste, fraud, and abuse. And so if we have any information that indicates that that happened in this situation or anything else, we'll look at it.
Thank you very much. We've also, been talking some today about the issues that occurred at the border during the Biden administration. And you might not agree with your predecessor on everything, but you probably would agree with some of the statements he made in testimony before this and other committees, raising alarms about the risk of terrorism from illegal border crossings. Since becoming director, have you gotten some insight into how well calibrated those warnings were, and what is the status of that risk now?
Since becoming director, there's been a sharp decrease of border crossings for known or suspected terrorists from the southern border. But unfortunately, there has been a sharp increase of known or suspected terrorists entering through our northern border. And so what I'm trying to do is work with our northern border states and our interagency to tackle that problem. But it is an absolutely massive border that can't physically be sealed. So we're going to have to get creative and put more resources into that.
And in a similar vein, there were over 500,000 unaccompanied children that crossed the southern border during the Biden administration. As we know, many were trafficked either through forced labor or sex trafficking. Do you have any insight into as to what the scale of that problem was and how have things changed over the last several months?
Other than what you outlined in terms of how it was described, I don't have any additional details. In terms of how many people are being trafficked into this country, especially unaccompanied missing children, that number has drastically reduced because the coyotes that smuggle these children for their criminal activity are the same ones that smuggle in narcotics, or the same one that traffic older age women. They're all interconnected. And because of the sealing of the southern border by this administration, that has come to a near halt.
That is a very important point, that we have seen far fewer victims of human trafficking because we finally prioritized border security. And by the way, you have children who are getting rescued because of the immigration enforcement activities that unfortunately some politicians in my state are trying to stop, thereby stopping those kids from getting rescued. We've seen, of course, a substantial reduction in crime here in Washington, D.C. since the FBI and the National Guard got involved. I'm kind of asking you to state the obvious here, but what is the mechanism there? Why have we seen a reduction of crime when D.C. has had such a huge crime problem for years, and then almost overnight we see such a big difference?
Because of the dedication and resources from President Trump's administration to utilize all federal, state, and local assets in a heavily crime-ridden area. I mean, if we did not have a crime-ridden area, then homicides, carjackings, and gun violence would not be dropping by 40, 50, 60%. And when you allow the police, the MPD, to work with federal authorities and allow the National Guard to set up your perimeter, this is what you can do in a few short weeks. And we at the FBI, under Operation Summer Heat, have set those Phase 01 operations in motion 4 months ago, quietly at the direction of President Trump. So we are scattered across cities across this country doing just that. But we're going to need more help to complete the job.
Yeah, in too many places in this country, crime has just been treated as sort of a norm, that this is the way things have to be. What's happened in D.C. shows that is not the case if we have the right policies and the right priorities. Finally, you know, this is tragically the second time in as many years that we've had an FBI director here following either an assassination or an assassination attempt. And so since there's been some time now since from the attempted assassination on President Trump at Butler, would you say that the public's understanding of what took place on that day is fairly consistent with all of the facts as you know them, or do you believe there's still material facts that have not been made public or are not fully understood by the public?
No, I think it's fairly consistent.
Thank you. I yield.
Gentleman yields back. The lady from Texas is recognized.
Man, oh man, there has been so much today, and I truly don't know where to start. So I'm just going to make sure that we start off with a few facts. So a couple of facts that we need to make clear for everyone is that, number one, Director Christopher Wray, when he was appointed to be the head of the FBI, was appointed by Donald Trump. Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining. Yet we are supposed to believe that
That's
you are
false.
the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I want to
Still
go
false.
through is to talk about show for your boss, because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe, I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues, and frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people. And even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously. Confessed online. So I'm confused about what it is that the FBI is doing except for trying to put on a show for The Apprentice or whatever you want to call him. The day after all of this took place, there was domestic terrorism that was taking place at HBCUs. They were targeted. Yet I didn't hear anything from the FBI about what was going on. And again, black people kept saying, how did we end up in this? Because the numbers are so very clear that white supremacy is a problem. And honestly, I've not heard anything out of you today that makes me believe that you're going to do anything about the white supremacy problem. The one that is leading to children being killed, children being shot, as well as members of their community as they're worshiping in their churches.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. If the gentleman would like to respond to any of that. Well, I'll respond. Kash Patel, as I said when I introduced him, public defender, former prosecutor, top staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, and FBI Director. I think that's a pretty good resume for the guy who's now running the top law enforcement agency in our country. And we've seen all the stats that he's given to the committee on how much better they're doing at getting the bad guys than the previous guy was doing. With that, I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I think you're witnessing some auditions, clickbait auditions for the Academy Award for my Democratic colleagues. We'll see how they fare as they're on MSNBC later on today. But do you care, before I launch into my line of questioning, to respond to Ms. Crockett from Texas on that very elaborate and theatric display?
Here's what I've learned in my government service. I don't give a damn what they say about me as long as I'm succeeding in the mission. We're succeeding in the mission because the men and women of the FBI have never been empowered to do more work and to hit the streets harder than by President Trump's authorities and resources he's given us. And so all I care about is that we are capturing more child predators than ever before, taking more drugs off the streets than ever before, that we are capturing murderers at a significantly historic rate, and we're delivering this country the lowest murder rate in recorded history. That are facts that you cannot dispute. But you can come at me all you want. I don't care.
Thank you, Director, for that. And we appreciate your service. We appreciate the results speak for themselves, I think, pretty plainly, and your commitment not only to results, but to transparency. So we do appreciate that. Director, who is John Durham?
He was a former federal prosecutor, United States attorney, and ultimately appointed special counsel in the first Trump administration.
Correct. And what there was a document that he released in his findings called the Durham Report. What was the Durham Report briefly, and what were the findings very briefly?
It was every special counsel that's appointed produces a report to the Attorney General. Special counsel's Durham Report largely focused on Crossfire Hurricane and included extensive summary findings in classified and unclassified manner. And we released the classified version, finally declassifying it for the American public in this committee.
Correct. And you released that in July of this year.
I think so.
Yes, sir. Isn't it true that in the classified Durham Annex, as it's referred to, that in 2016 the Obama administration obtained intelligence information from a source contained in two separate memoranda, one in January of 2016 and one in March? The two memoranda described confidential conversations between DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz and two individuals from the Soros Open Society Foundation. Isn't that true?
As written in the report, I'll let her speak for itself.
In the Durham Annex in January of 2016, the memorandum noted in part that President Barack Obama intended to scuttle the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server and mishandling of highly classified information during her time as Secretary of State. Isn't that found in the report?
I believe so.
Isn't it also found in the report that in March of 2016, the memorandum also included references to the same Obama effort to shut down the Clinton investigation, but additionally outlined a plan to falsely connect Trump to Russia? Isn't that in the Durham Annex?
I think it's in more than the Durham report, but yes.
The memo also stated in part that, quote, the Democrat Party's opposition is focused on discrediting Trump, among other things. The Clinton staff, with the support from special services, is preparing scandalous revelations of business connections between Trump and the Russian mafia. Isn't that also found in the now unclassified Durham Annex?
I believe so, sir.
According to the Durham Annex, based on analysis and translation of the intelligence, FBI analysts believed that special services could either mean the FBI or CIA, or the Trump dossier author Christopher Steele. Isn't that in the Durham Annex?
I believe so, sir.
When the Obama administration received intelligence in March of 2018, Fusion GPS was preparing open source opposition research regarding purported ties between Trump and Russians. The research was paid by the Clintons campaign and the DNC. Isn't that open source and also in the Durham Annex?
I believe both.
Okay. And so also in the Durham Annex, which I found interesting, was the potential campaign plan was shared with high-ranking career officials at DOJ. Isn't that in the Durham Annex?
I believe so, sir.
The Durham Annex describes that in July of 2016, emails allegedly between Leonard Bernardo, senior vice president of George Soros' Open Society Foundation, included data providing specificity on the Clinton plan in an attempt to smear Donald Trump by falsely linking him to Russia. Isn't that in the Durham report?
I believe so.
And so, briefly, this additional evidence that you've unclassified and released to the American public, what does that purport to show or augment about the Durham report that you can share with the American people?
Put simply, that the FBI was weaponized.
Against a political campaign.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The
I have UCs.
gentlelady from Texas recognized for unanimous consent.
Yes. First one is Russia's ghostwriter hacker group takes aim at German election. This is from Politico.
Objection.
The next one is Director of National Intelligence, 30 days until election 2024, which specifically states that our assessments about activities and goals of Russia, Iran, and China are unchanged from earlier election security updates that they were meddling.
Objection.
And I've got three more. The last three are that how Russia is using artificial intelligence to interfere in elections. Moscow's attempts to interfere in U.S. and other elections are nothing new, though their tactics and strategy are constantly evolving.
Objection.
The next one is Russian interference coming soon to an election near you. Russia pursues a systemic strategy of undermining elections and influencing public opinion in the West, EU, and NATO countries. Must recognize that Moscow often acts through agents within their own borders and build resilience to such interference.
What's the source?
This one is CarnegieEndowment.org.
Okay, without objection.
Thank you.
The gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director Patel. I'm glad that I'm going a little out of order here because I'm going to pursue some of the things that you were just talking to Mr. Fry about and remind you about your confirmation hearing. At your confirmation hearing in January, you said under oath, and I quote, "There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed." And in your written response to the Senate questionnaire, you said, I quote, "Personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law, and every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments." So I want to just go through a couple of scenarios with you to get a sense of whether you think these are examples of politicization of the FBI or making decisions based on the performance and adherence to the law. So, first question. Would hiring FBI agents, analysts, and supervisors from only one political party being politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
We don't ask FBI people, applicants, where their political parties are.
Mr. Patel, do you ask FBI applicants who they voted for?
The FBI does not.
Are you aware that in the lawsuit that Mr. Driscoll filed against you and the FBI, he was asked who he voted for?
Since that lawsuit has been filed, that's ongoing litigation, I'm not able to comment.
Well, but it also means that you just said that what happened in his situation didn't happen. So we will go on to the next question. Let me ask you an even easier one. Does firing agents for working on the cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone.
Has the FBI ever been sued by somebody who felt that they were terminated based on case assignments?
In the entire history of the FBI, I'm sure they have.
No, since your tenure.
I'm sure there's ongoing litigation.
Yes. In fact, there is ongoing litigation. And in fact, people have been asked who they voted for. And in fact, you are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid, and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group. When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience in the Bureau, Special Agent Walter Jardia, because he worked on the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally, Peter Navarro. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You put saving your job, which I actually believe you were being honest about during your confirmation hearings, over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
Time of the gentlelady is expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, it's great to have this opportunity. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. And I've got to say, one of the most disheartening components of the previous administration, when I was working with local law enforcement all over the state of North Carolina, all over the country, people rightfully did not really care about the inner workings of Washington, D.C. The FBI had previously been the paramount, the sterling, the top of the top law enforcement agency. They wanted their FBI to fight crime. Whatever small town, city, whatever it may be, FBI was expected to deliver for the American people. And then reports started to come out, in addition to the likes of McCabe, Comey, Clapper, Strzok, Page, that the FBI was targeting Christian nonprofits. They were targeting parents for protesting radical gender theory at their schools. They targeted Catholics, churches, pro-life organizations. And the FBI was really bruised in just modern day America. And your focus on getting the FBI back to the streets, fighting criminals, locking up bad guys, whether they're violent criminals, whether they're sex predators, whatever they may be, that is restoring the reputation of the FBI, and I thank you for that. In regards to the perceptions, I want to be very clear here. You mentioned the statistics about removing dangerous illegals, removing thousands of kilograms of drugs, violent criminals, guns. The border is secure. These accomplishments are noteworthy and they're needed. But at the same token, I want your take. The fight is not over. Isn't that correct? When we look at what happened in the previous administration, the number of illegal alien criminals that made their way into this country of every type, they're embedded, they're here, and it's going to take a sustained effort to win this battle.
That's the critical component, sustained effort. And that's the critical component when you look at what happened in Washington, D.C. We're not here for 4 seconds in terms of safeguarding Washington, D.C. Yep. It's a sustained initiative. We're taking it to Memphis and wherever we decide else. And so we are going to continue the mission till it's done.
In regards to offloading some of the agents from Washington, D.C. to the states, to the people, can you just explain how tactically that is a force multiplier in the law enforcement community around the country?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. You don't even have to be in law enforcement to know that. If you put cops with other cops, they're going to do cop work.
That's right.
And what was needed in the communities out there was more cops. What was not needed in the bloated bureaucracy of Washington, D.C. was a third of the FBI's workforce, because a third of the crime does not happen in the Washington, D.C. NCR area. And so the results speak for themselves. Our state and local partners, I've always said this, are our biggest ally, our greatest ally and partner, and we cannot do the work without them. But we got to send our guys to them.
That's right. And in regards to the last 4 years, the open border policies, whether it's terrorism, drug trafficking, human trafficking, violent crime, massive amounts of organized retail theft, and other types of criminal behavior, can you describe, just so anyone who's listening here can talk about, how serious the levels of criminality have become in the United States?
Well, unfortunately, in order to have these record-breaking numbers of arrests and seizures, you tragically had to have a record-breaking explosion in violent crime. And it doesn't happen overnight. And it came in from all corners of the earth and from all platforms, including social media. And that's the root cause of all of these evils. And in order to clean it up, it's not going to happen overnight. But the men and women of the FBI, what they did in these 7 months, everybody should be talking about it. Every single district in this dais is safer now, today, than it has ever been because of that work.
And in regards to the ongoing political climate, Director Patel, how do sanctuary policies that are still being implemented and defended in certain states, cities, and counties, how do they help or hurt your efforts to make America safer?
Well, if you are harboring criminals, you are harboring our ability to keep our communities safe. It's that simple. If you have a fugitive warrant for a violent felony offense and we are not able to procure you because of policies or rules that don't allow us to go get them, and time again, we have heard all too many illegal immigrants who should not have been here murdering women, murdering children, giving drugs to our youth, and raping our children, and that is unacceptable.
Straightly put, can you separate immigration enforcement with fighting crime?
They're intertwined.
Thank you. In regards to policies like cashless bail, how does that help or hurt your efforts?
Criminals know that there are certain jurisdictions where if they shoot someone, they'll be out the door within the next hour to do it again. Yeah. And that's an ethos that is, and a system that has been built out over years that we are combating.
How is defunding the police around the country, how does that help or hurt?
As long as I'm in this seat, we're not defunding any cops.
Good. Thank you, Director. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Garcia is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, and welcome again, Director Patel. As members of the Judiciary Committee, we have a responsibility to conduct oversight of the FBI and assess whether or not you're doing a good job in a responsible and impartial manner, or whether you're just a henchman for Donald Trump who's weaponizing the Bureau at the expense of public safety. As Congressman per tenure, is the Bureau's expanded role in low-level, non-criminal immigration enforcement. I have a report here from the conservative Cato Institute. They've obtained ICE documents showing that over 2,500 FBI personnel are now working on immigration enforcement. A yes or no question. Did you sign off on this?
2,500 FBI employees are not currently working on immigration enforcement.
Did you sign off on this?
On the Cato report?
On the 2,500 personnel, FBI personnel that have been reported to now be working on immigration enforcement.
I couldn't have signed off on it because it's not happening.
You can call it whatever you want, but the reality is that over 2,000 personnel individuals are now working at ICE instead of their jobs. I want to follow up on something that Senator Durbin asked you about yesterday. This article from MSNBC reports that nearly every agent on Baltimore's domestic terrorism unit, who was, by the way, investigating the 764 network of child predators, was diverted to work on immigration enforcement full-time. That forced them to, and I quote him, walk away from investigations of a network of violent predators that targets and exploits children online. Yes or no? Were you aware that this happened, and did you sign off on it?
The premise is false. The 764 network in Baltimore is taken down, and FBI agents do double and triple duty all the time.
I'm reclaiming my time. You told Senator Durbin yesterday you didn't know about it, so your testimony is inconsistent today.
No, I found out.
Final question. Let me ask you again a yes or no question. Are you aware that agents have been told by supervisors not to documenting their shifting of resources toward immigration-related work?
That's a literal another falsehood. It's impossible to move a human being without documenting that work.
As FBI director, you must be transparent with Congress. You need to provide us information about how many agents have been diverted to non-criminal immigration enforcement, why the Baltimore unit was dismantled, and whether there's a cover-up of what's happening under your leadership. Because this goes to the heart of whether or not you're carrying out the stated mission of the FBI, keeping our communities safe. Diverting FBI agents from investigating violent child predators doesn't make us safer. Using FBI resources to target parents, children, and other immigrants for low-level, non-criminal enforcement doesn't make us safer. Enabling violent, lawless conduct by federal enforcement doesn't make us safer. As we saw last week when an ICE officer killed one of my constituents. And I know that the FBI has been involved in that investigation. And yesterday, ICE did a raid in the suburb of Elgin where 2 U.S. citizens were arrested, and who accompanied them on that filming of that show? Secretary Nunn. Shameful conduct. And weaponizing the FBI to serve Donald Trump's political agenda instead of the American people does not make us safer. Before I yield back, Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to submit the following documents for the record. A report from the Cato Institute, which I referenced earlier, where ICE has diverted over 2,500 officers from their jobs. And two, an article from MSNBC titled Trump's Deportations Divert FBI Agents Off Child Predator Cases, and an article from CNN entitled
Yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin, recognized.
Thank you, and thank you, by the way, for coming over here. Sorry you have to put up with all this. I know when you took over, the FBI's reputation in a lot of circles perhaps had never been lower. I mean, part of that is brazen involvement in political activity, the Foreign Influence Task Force, getting involved and trying to suppress news stories in the New York Post, Crossfire Hurricane coming up with bogus stories to try to flip the 2016 election, FBI downplaying the stories of Hillary Clinton's emails in the 2016 election. That's their overt involvement in political activity. I think a strong anti-religious bias. We talked about stories of an anti-Catholic bias in there. I know I've talked to people about horrific overreaction at the big Hindu temple in New Jersey, in which, just so people understand, you had a rectory in the temple area, the religious leaders, taken out at gunpoint, big problems. And I think finally the FBI trying to turn America's viewpoint on certain political issues. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about what was done in Mexico with regard to shipping weapons, fast and furious, shipping weapons into Mexico in an effort, I think, to try to turn the Americans against the First Amendment. But in any event, what scares me is, and all these horrible things that were done in the past, there were individual FBI agents who participated in them, in which apparently their supervisors told them this was okay or even admirable. And what I'm going to ask you, are you able to do anything to make sure that in the future these corrupted FBI agents understand the importance of religion in our life, and they're not to view with suspicion? They understand parental rights and the idea that traditionally in America, parents have the ability to object when their young 5 or 6 year old children or year-old or very young children are getting what most people consider highly inappropriate sexual contact. What are we doing there to try to make sure we don't have problems with these FBI agents again, or make sure that in the future administrations, they would object if they are asked to behave in such a immoral fashion?
Two things. If you are corrupt, you don't work at the FBI. It's that simple. So we don't tolerate any form of corruption or any deviation from our high standards, whether you're an agent in U.S. history.
I'm sure that's because of you, and you're kind of anticipating my next question. I talk to retired FBI agents in my area who sometimes retired in part because they hated the woke, anti-conservative culture at the FBI. And they are concerned, the retiring agents, about new agents, not on your watch, but before this, being corrupted in the universities before they were hired. And they are very worried about what will happen with the new agents. So I think you're answering my question. Do you feel you'll be able to a certain extent solve the problem of inappropriately woke agents filling up the agency in the past, because now you're going to have a larger pool to draw from?
Everybody that comes to work at the FBI is allowed to have their own belief system, but they're not allowed to bring that belief system into the workplace. And anyone that does won't work at the FBI.
Okay, very good. Now, recently, There's sort of another potential scandal, I guess, a politically motivated thing, Arctic frost. Do you want to comment on that? And it appears one more time as perhaps the FBI was getting involved in what would normally be considered political events.
We are not getting involved in political events, except this one.
Okay.